Hello, welcome back to LIVENODING. In this episode, I want to show you how you can create something like this kind of effects of splitting geometry of Suzanne or any kind of 3D mesh into kind of like a abstract looking thing, but it's actually just Voronoi underneath. You're gonna end up with infinite variations of this. This was actually inspired by this setup by Blue Nile 3D. So in order to understand this completely, you need to watch this video first. It's around 40 minutes, but I think the most important part is this generated mapping in GN, and I just made a slight variations in the end. With Blue Nile's setup, you're gonna learn how to create a curve out of it. With my setup, I actually split the plane or the plate of geometry of Suzanne into using the Voronoi texture into this kind of abstract looking result. So like the Blue Nile setup, first of all, if we hide Suzanne, first of all you need to understand the setup first. This is using the shader, right? It's explained completely on this video. You're gonna watch this first. So in the shader, you basically get the generated texture coordinate, and then you remap it, normalizing it with minus 0.5. You separate the vector into x and y, do the multiplications, and combine it, and then send this vector into Voronoi texture. If you use the noise texture, you're gonna get something that's a little bit more complicated if that's what you want, or just use the Voronoi. And this is the shader setup. If I hide this, bring back Suzanne. With the Suzanne setup, I'm just gonna explain it quickly. First of all, I remesh it using remesh modifier, and then with geometry nodes, I did exactly what Blue Nile set up here, most of them, except for the last part. I simply split the edges and random extrude it, and I did some blurring over here. Let me simplify this first. Actually, let's skip the noise and actually the Voronoi. Even the Voronoi looks pretty complicated as it is. Maybe I just remap it too much around here. So I'm basically splitting the face set and then just randomly extruding it, or let's remove the solidify for now. So this is the basic setup. Suzanne completely split, and the skin is completely separated using Voronoi. Looks complicated, but it's really simple. Let's use a single Voronoi. Yeah, that's probably simpler. So don't worry, you can experiment with the noise and procedural texture here, and I can send this to the W so we can see the variations. That's not important, but just like the setup by Blue Nile, I use the geometry. So the geometry comes in, and then I can use the grid actually to make it simpler. So this is the grid. I think I can just use one, but whether it's Suzanne or the grid, let's try with the grid for now. So it's faster, simpler. So the grid comes in, I use the bounding box, and then use the map range, normalize the coordinates, get the coordinates from bounding box, and then just use add minus 0.5 to normalizing it, and separate the x and z, multiply, so double the x, multiply with itself, combine the two. You can experiment with the z as well. Let's just zero this out, and then send this vector out to Voronoi. I use 4D so I can animate the W. You don't play around with the scale, and the rest of it is just magic, right? Oh yeah, what I did, I used this map range, remap the range of the value, and then plug this into face group ID to get the bounding edges, and then use this selection into split edges. So I'm splitting the mesh into separate mesh plate, and then just extrude it randomly. If I didn't extrude, it's just gonna be like that. I'm extruding it randomly, so it's basically pushing it a little bit, so we get some randomizations. I think there's something here that you can replicate to get the edges as curve, but in my case it's separating the plate, similar to like a separating mesh using face set, so a little bit random, and then I blur it a little bit, blur the attributes. Maybe we can use 0.5 here, and then iterate multiple times. So we have that, and you simply use solidify if you want to. Oh, okay. Let me see. Use Suzanne in this case. Yeah. So that's the result we get. It's pretty interesting actually, the effects. There's something that you can modify here to maybe use different materials, randomize the materials for every plate. That's gonna look pretty cool, I guess. The color, I store the color as well. Here, store the name attributes into blah. So this is storing the value, so we get this different color. So if we go to the shader editor of the material, of material 2, this is the attributes coming into base color, but we can also plug this into the roughness, maybe, and increase the metalness. So we have, or maybe plug this there, and whichever you like. So I want to have randomness with the metalness, so we get different color and different metalness value, metallic value for each plate. So randomizing Suzanne. Let's go back to this guy. Maybe don't displace it too much, just a little bit, but we still want just to have separations. I have a feeling just use twice of the Voronoi, we get more complexity. .1 or 0.05, randomize the seed, whatever there. I could just plug in the noise as well. Yeah, you get this kind of infinite result, but I recommend you to just play around with it. Sometimes you might notice not every part gets split. It's depending on this value, I think, the map range. So increase this value, you might get more interesting pattern. Play around with this as well. Manhattan pattern or Euclidean. Let's randomize this a little bit. Yeah, so maybe smooth. You can actually smooth the whole thing in here. You can use this smooth. You're gonna get different result. So this one can simplify the shape of Suzanne. You still have it if you use adaptivity, and use solidify if you want. Solidify will just make it like kind of like solid instead of just flat panel. So yeah, that's pretty much the setup. So let me show you once again. It's pretty simple. Suzanne coming in, bounding box minimum and maximum of all Suzanne points positions, and map the range using this position, remap the value, yeah, and then all this procedural noise coming in, and then the most important part, face group boundaries, get the edges, split the edges, and then just this random extrusion if you want to. You don't need to do this. I just add this at the last minute, and we got this smoothing, set position, and set material. Okay, so if you want clear explanation, and then I think this part is also nice. Like yeah, he used a ray cast in this case to randomize the height based on color. This is actually slightly better than my method, but I'll give you the link to this video as well, so you should watch this before watch mine, and hopefully you understand the whole thing completely and then just modify it to whatever you like. Alright, so hopefully you find this useful. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.